All right. Next, we have County Supervisor Cindy Chavez.
So, well, good morning. I almost felt like it was afternoon, but let me first start out by saying how lucky you are to have President Ellenberg as your supervisor. As you can tell, the bandwidth of what she's working on and achieving is really pretty profound. I just wanted to, I've got a chance to hear a little bit of the mayor and Susan's presentation. So I'm going to pivot to a different topic and happy to answer questions on anything that is on your mind. One of the issues that I'm really focused on right now is how we address the growing scourge of fentanyl in our community. And one of the things that has happened is that we're losing very young children to young adults who are using fentanyl. And some of them are addicted to fentanyl, but many of them, it's the first time they're trying it or they're using a counterfeit pill, and it's causing them to overdose. And the public lexicon around that is poisoning because people didn't even know they were necessarily taking fentanyl, and kids don't necessarily know that. So just a couple of statistics about what's happening here. Since 2020, fentanyl's killed more than 150 people under the age of 30 in our county. The Board of Supervisors established a fentanyl working group in 2021, and that's something that I co-chair with the district attorney, and we're working on a number of different areas to address fentanyl. And many of them are I mean, our staff is doing some amazing work, but I wanted to just share two with you and would love to get your thoughts on how we can collaborate. We've been working closely with the school districts, with public agencies to make sure that everybody in our community has access to fentanyl. And fentanyl is, to Narcan, sorry about that, to Narcan. And that is a tool that we use to reverse the what's happening when someone becomes is overdosing. And so what that allows is when you're overdosing from fentanyl, it slows your breathing and it can slow your heart rate, where literally your body just stops working. And Narcan is with just 2 or 1 sometimes spray of it can revive that person, allow us to call 911 and get them the help they need. So what we're working on is getting out into the community access to naloxone so that everybody has it the same way you have Band-Aids in your first aid kit, that you have access to it. Naloxone will be available, for example, at all our transit centers. We have vending machines at our colleges, and we're working to get more. So if folks want to have access to naloxone, that they have it. We have, so that's one body of work. And what we'd like to do, and I'll make sure we do this, is we'll send through your leadership here the links that you can access the naloxone kits. We have a mail-in system where you can send an email and they'll overnight you naloxone. The only request that they make, our staff makes, is that if you use it, they'd love to learn about that, like where you were able to use it, what the outcome, if you know, of the patient, mostly so that we can determine whether or not the way we're approaching this is effective. I'm really excited that the county is playing a leadership role statewide and really reaching deep into our communities and at a really deep level. And one thing that we benefited from is that Senator Cortese put forth a law that requires schools to have working groups to look at opioid addiction and other kinds of risks relative to drugs, so that we are really making sure that we're getting information down to the schools as quickly and as early as possible. And so I'm going to really, I'm going to actually stop there, except to say that, we're going to have a tougher budget year than we've had in the past. And one of the things that's happening is that the state is looking at taking back money that we currently get through a program called ERAF. And it's a little bit complicated. It's a funding formula that allows counties like ours to collect money. And what we use that money for, and for us, the risk this year is losing approximately $36 million. And just as a reminder, we fund, and we just, Susan and I working together, got $5 million to Second Harvest Food Bank and a number of folks who are feeding our community. And Susan's been working really hard on making sure we have childcare resources available. All of those things are going to be at risk. And what concerns me about the 36 million is that if the legislature is effective in pulling that money back, there's another 100 million we receive through a similar funding formula that I think will leave us. And we at our county use our general fund dollars really to provide services for mental illness and housing and homelessness, and providing those services that allow people to stay housed. So this money isn't money we would be using for even roads. This is service money. So we'll be reaching out to all of you to ask you to send letters and emails to our legislative delegation so that this is their highest priority to protect us keeping those resources. So.
One quick question then from the public. Is Narcan, that's naloxone, available in all public schools? What about at public libraries and community centers where kids and teens might spend time after school gets out?
That's an excellent question. And almost every school district has adopted a framework right now for the accessibility of Narcan in their schools, or naloxone in their schools. I know that San Jose Unified is our last big school district, and they're working through their own processes and procedures now to make that available on their campuses. And frankly, state law is going to force everybody to have some resource available at their schools. In terms of community centers, and that's a really good point, and I'll have to check on that, but if we're not doing it, we will be. So thank you for that. That's a really smart idea.
Other comments or questions for the supervisor? As I was writing down each question, before I could finish writing the question, then you answered the exact question, so I just crossed it out. So I've got a number of red lines here on my notebook. And kind of you beat me to the punch on several. How can an observer be certain it is a fentanyl OD and therefore that Narcan or naloxone is the appropriate remedy?
That is an excellent question. Here's the great news about naloxone and Narcan. Narcan is the brand, naloxone is the type of drug. But if I were to spray Narcan right now in my nose, it would have no effect. Like, it wouldn't hurt me at all. So the good news about this is you can't hurt anybody using it. You really can't. And it's not addictive. So people don't try to steal it to use it, because the way it functions, it just doesn't have that property to it. So better safe than sorry. And the other thing I would say is it's really important that even if the person is revived, you call 911, because depending on how much fentanyl someone's ingested, they could slip right back into an overdose. Like, you could have revived them for a bit of time. So you want to stay with them, stay focused on them, and you can even put more naloxone in them to keep them breathing until help arrives. That's an excellent question.
Agreed. Other comments or questions for the supervisor? SHPNA is very fortunate in that two of the supervisor boundaries overlap. So we're fortunate enough to have both yourself and Board President Ellenberg advocating on our behalf, which not every neighborhood association is so fortunate.
Well, I appreciate the work that you do and all the outreach. And that's a great question too about can Narcan be added to CPR training. We're actually looking at that now because the other thing that we know is that for some people, the assisted breathing is actually very important. And so we're looking at working with our CERT teams right now across the county. And you probably have some CERT volunteers that are really active in your group. And they are the ones who said, hey, we should be your number one defense. So we're going to go make sure that we're really working with them and really upgrading that training as we speak. And the other thing is that we're also, most police officers have it in their cars now, no matter what city you're in Santa Clara County. So if you dial 911 for an emergency and you say it's an overdose, you might get an officer before you get a fire response or an AMR, an ambulance response. But don't worry, they have Narcan and they're trained. So that's what we want.
And the supervisor comment about CERT was quite appropriate. We actually have 2 or 3 people here with us today who are working very hard to kind of increase and improve the kind of the infrastructure of how CERT would be deployed in given situations. Specific nod to David in the audience and Sandy, I know, who are pushing hard for exactly that. So knowing obviously that there's advocates for exactly that at the county level too, is perhaps something we can leverage further, David. So you and I, we can circle back offline and see if we can take it beyond D6 to incorporate some county organization as well.
And one person I'll connect you to is we have a lead person who's working on how we integrate CERT and our neighborhood associations more into our emergency operations at the county. And just to remember that when there's an emergency, each city where the emergency starts is the lead agency. When something becomes bigger, like obviously like COVID, but large fires, the county is emergency services are well, they're already in place, but that infrastructure is something that we've been building out quite a bit since COVID. So Steve Preminger is working to really incorporate, do a better job of incorporating our CERT communities and our neighborhood associations to be connected, so that in the event of emergencies, that we're even more able to respond more quickly. So for those of you who are part of CERT, let me just say a very, very sincere thank you. That is God's work. And, you know, given the new environment we're in with climate change and other significant situations, we're going to be relying on each other, our neighbors, quite a lot. So thank you.
I know there's at least, looking by there, I know there's at least 4 or 5 of us here in the meeting today that are CERT trained. And if I was to move this green screen, you'd see my green CERT backpack about 10 feet behind.
And we want to make sure all those backpacks have Narcan. So we're getting to work.
No, exactly. I would say again, you beat me to the punch on that. So obviously, thank you. And obviously, thank you for your willingness to pivot and kind of end up hitting actually something that was later on the agenda for me to bring up and encourage people to get engaged with. So much thanks, obviously, for your willingness to expand upon that. It's very important that too often gets overlooked, unfortunately, and until it's too late, and then it's suddenly, why isn't this available? Why isn't this ready? That we'd rather have all the systems in place and never have to use it than realize we didn't have the systems in place.
Well said. Thank you all.
Thank you.